All right. This is set up just a little bit differently because we're gonna make a very drippy mess. And so you need to have a place that you can make a mess because it's gonna drip down. So if you have a rug underneath your easel or something like that, just make sure that whatever is underneath it is protected. I'm gonna prop it up against our splatter box, and then I have the tablecloth underneath to kind of help protect. What we're gonna be painting today are these drippy tulips. And most often I will tell you, purchase the most expensive paint that you can afford, just because typically that means it has more pigment in it and all that fun stuff that makes it go a lot longer. However, when you are painting something drippy, oftentimes it's better to have something thinner. And so we're going to be using craft paint today. You can use whatever you have. I would just use whatever you have. It just may take longer because you're going to have to kind of get it very wetted down. You are for sure going to need a water bottle. That's going to be necessary. And I just grabbed several pinks. I've had these for a while, so I don't even know if they still make these exact colors, but you just need varying shades of pink and then white and this kind of like off-white. It's called bleached sand, but just something that's a little, almost like a light kind of gray taupey. And then we're gonna have a couple of greens, so a dark green and a light green, and then a couple of blues, a blue and kind of a more aqua color. So just so that you have some varying shades, that is going to be great. I am going to just start with the varying shades of pink and the white and the unbleached sand or bleached sand to start. Let me get you zoomed in. So today we are going to be painting on this 20 by 20 canvas. I'm gonna see if this will stand on top of here so you can see it all in one shot, perhaps. As long as it doesn't move, we should be good. And then I'll get you zoomed in on that. Like I said, I'm using a 20 by 20. This was painted on a 16 by 20. This is gonna be a custom order. So I just needed a specific size. That's why it took me a little bit longer to get this class posted because I was waiting on this canvas. Also today, I grabbed a couple of brushes. I have this kind of like, it's just like a cheapy, bristly brush that I've had forever and ever. It holds a lot of water, so it'll be great for dripping. And then I also grabbed a small flat because I always like a small flat. And then let me make sure that everything is in this shot. I don't want to like block the view. Normally I watch this while I record and I'm not. It's probably a mistake. All right. So first things first, we're going to take our water bottle and we're going to get the canvas pretty wet, wetter than normal. This still doesn't need to be like sopping, like still don't hold it point blank and shoot, but a nice drippiness. If you're not sure if you have too much, you can kind of take your brush and get that in there so it's not like super, super wet. And then we're just gonna paint. So we're gonna start at about, like 3/4 down. So we're gonna have about 1/4 of it to be sky and then 3/4 of it to be flowers. If you want to change that around, you can. Let's say you really want more sky. You can flip flop that so that the flowers end about here, What you want to try to avoid doing is ending your flowers smack dab in the center. It's just not as interesting. It doesn't read as interesting. So this will kind of keep it flowy and light. And then we're just gonna paint. I'm gonna start with the brightest pink. And this plate is gonna be a big old mess by the time we're done with it, so don't worry about it. We're just wetting down some of that bright pink. Might be a little high on this one. I feel like I'm missing the darker pink. I think it's going to be fine for this because I do want this to be a little softer than that one. But if you wanted to have more of a bright pink, you could do that. And all we're doing is making messy U's. And for the most part, they're about the same size, but sometimes they're a little smaller and you can just kind of throw one in and like, I think this one's a little high. So what I'm going to do is actually take that out when I do the sky. And you're not leaving a whole lot of empty space because we are going to have some greenery in here, but for the most part, they're pretty close to each other. And we're not trying to make them drip just yet, so don't get worried about if your pink isn't dripping yet. We'll worry about that later. But you can see I'm just doing this very loosely. I'm not overthinking it. I'm trying to have them not exactly match each other. So, and I got this big hole here, so let's do a little something in there. Okay, so again, I'm going to take this one out just because I think that one's a little too high. And we'll cover it up when we get to the background. I don't, in proportion, I don't think it really makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got kind of our first go around here. If you have any holes, you want to make sure that you kind of fill those in. Not all of them will necessarily have to have all these tones. You can have a few that are a little lighter. So, and we'll have time to fill in any additional holes that kind of show themselves as we go. And I'm just going to kind of wipe my brush off. I'm not going to clean it. And I'm going to go right over to the next pink. This is kind of my mid-tone pink. And you just want to start adding that. Now, if you start doing this and there's not a lot of difference, add a little bit of white to this pink so that it does have a little bit more variance in here. And again, not trying to get things to match, not trying to make perfect tulips either. This is very kind of representational, not realistic. If you wanted to take your time and make a realistic field, you are more than welcome to do so. That's just not my jam. And just kind of adding a little of this pink here and there. Sometimes I do it on the outside, sometimes it's just on the inside. Can't really go wrong as long as you're just varying it as you go. If it's a pattern, your eyes will kind of be drawn to the pattern, and we don't want to necessarily create a pattern. I want it to be a little bit looser than that. Okay, we'll wipe that off. Then we're going to go to the other light pink. This one is like a light apricot, I would say. It is called White Peach. And you'll see, I'm just doing this really quick. I don't want things to dry. I don't want it to take over. We still have to do our drippies. Just kind of like throw this together. If you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, slow down, you can pause it, get your section done, and then restart when you are ready. Okay. And I'll just, if there's little holes, I'll just kind of throw in some of that pink. It's not that big of a deal. Now we're gonna go over, this time I am gonna clean my brush off. And we're gonna go into this what's called bleached sand, which is this kind of pale, creamy color. I'm just gonna kind of add some of that. What you should be getting is like a variance. Now, if you'll notice, sometimes they are dripping on their own. Because like I went straight from this bucket into that creamy color. And so you might get some little drippy starting, which is great. That's why I like this little cheapo brush so much, is it holds quite a bit of water, which isn't necessarily ideal for every project, but when you're doing a drippy project, it's pretty great. You just kind of have to hold that down and it'll push some of that water right out. Okay. So I'm looking at that, a couple other places. If it's not holding enough, go get a little bit more water. Just kind of starts to create this fun drippy effect, which we'll do more and more of as we do layers. But I do like to get a few of them kind of moving and grooving in this part. Even though a lot of this will get covered up with when we do the green, it still adds this element of looseness that helps you kind of keep going with this. We're going to go right into the white again with that really wet brush. If your brush doesn't hold that much water, you can just wet it down really well. And then we're just going to add that in. Sometimes we'll just grab some of that white and add. There's not tons of the white. There is a little bit. So we kind of just play with that. The more uptight that you are with your strokes, the more that's going to show in the final painting. So just keep that in mind. If you want it to be really loose, you have to actually paint it really loose. You can't fake it. Sometimes when you do this, you'll get like this weird place where the blob is. I'm just going to work that in so that it doesn't show up quite as out there. And we'll add a little bit more of this to this when we get some of the green and stuff done, because we want some of this pink drippage to be on top of the green. And so if we do it all right now, it'll be hidden, and we don't want the whole thing to be hidden. I am going to use a flat brush to do the green part, just because I don't want it to hold quite as much water. It's mainly going to be this like lighter green, which is called foliage green. And then I also have a little bit of, this one is a dark green called Plantation Pine. Again, I've had these paints for a while, so I don't exactly know how new they are and how much they're probably carried. We also have this one called Sea Glass. I do want a little bit of that. This is like a very light, whited down, greened out a little bit sea glass. Bahama blue. Very similar. It's just a little softer and it looks like sea glass. Okay. So I'm going to take some of that green and all I'm doing is going through here where between the tulips and filling in any white. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not trying to be perfect about this, but you do want to make it where you're not leaving white showing. Some of the time you can add the darker green too. And you know, if you cover up some of the drippage, not the end of the world, because we're going to add more drippage in. Sometimes it's fun to leave it, sometimes it just does better and it's easier just to kind of take it out. Just gonna go in there and fill in any of these little kind of holes. I think it's easier just to paint over those drips than to paint around them, because that just takes too much effort. I don't want to do that much effort. And if you cover up too much of your tulip somewhere, not a big deal, because we're still going to go in and kind of add stuff to that. And every once in a while, I'm going to add a little bit of that sea glass too, because it kind of cools it down a little bit. And you'll notice I'm not trying to be perfect here, I'm just kind of throwing it in here. So that it doesn't lose its looseness and it doesn't completely dry out. So I do want to continue with layers. And when in doubt, if there's a place that you're not sure about, you can skip it and come back and see, like, does it look weird if the lines are covered, if the lines aren't covered? Generally in this stage, it's gonna look weird if the lines are not covered. What this is creating is the greenery that's in this field of tulips. But we don't want it to be all one color, because then it looks kind of stagnant. You have a lot of different tones. It's going to have more movement to it. So like it kind of moves and grooves. Now, when you get up here to the top, I don't want you to have a straight line. So you can have some different areas where the green reaches for the sky, just so that it doesn't have like a real harsh line. So anywhere there's a harsh line in a loose painting, your eye is going to immediately be drawn to that, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So then I'm going to look through here and make sure that I don't have any naked spaces down here amongst all this stuff. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna grab a couple of my blues here. Running out of space. Plan very well for this. So I've got kind of this like mid baby blue, and I'm gonna also work in some white. I'll even work in a little of the pinks and stuff too, because I want it to be almost like a sunset. So there is quite a bit of movement here. I also am using this minty sea glass within that. White, that, and just add it right there if you want. You'll notice that most of the time on these videos, I paint flat because that's what I prefer. But on this particular time, you need gravity to kind of help you and create these lines. And so you're going to need some of that. I'm just going to kind of swoop in a little of these kind of pinks through here. Where the pinks meet the blues, you might end up with a little kind of periwinkle or purples. It just kind of depends how much of each of those you have. I'm trying not to paint on my top painting. And kind of just to get that swoopy effect, make swoopy brush strokes. Again, the quicker you can go, the looser and the more you'll get kind of this like blend with it. If you go really slow, you're gonna miss out on a lot of that. And then as you get down here to your field, you're just gonna go down to your flowers. You just wanna make sure that you're covering up all of that sky. So that you don't have any spaces left. You may pull out, like, so when you get this, you may pull green into the sky. That is okay. You don't want a completely green sky because then it's going to look kind of like a storm, but you can have a little bit. Swoop that so that it has some more movement, more white. Lighter areas. Okay. That's our sky. If you want to add more pinks, you can. If you want to add more, like I don't have a lot of this unbleached color. Add a little bit of that to that. And I think because of the way this is going to continue, I want to make sure that I have this very top of this painted like I want it, so that when I go to paint the edges, it's not not having to like patch anything up. You could continue your edges over the sides. Maybe that's what I'll do here. You just have to kind of figure it out. This is kind of what we call like a deep dish canvas, so it's really thick, which has a lot more room. And so sometimes I paint a little design on that. But I think because of the softness of this design, I just want to have a continuation, just for a better kind of feel. And that's, no, I don't want, I just want to have a lot of good movement. Look at it from different angles. I think I like that. So I need to pour a little bit more of that pink. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have some drippy guys of the blue that'll start at the top and kind of come down. So you're gonna have this really wet brush. Find an area and just kind of create it. Now, you're gonna have this like start point. You can blend it in with your fingers so that it's not quite so harsh, or with the brush, and then just kind of even use your flat, kind of smooth that into that, just to kind of soften it up a little bit. The more water that is in it, the more pressure you put, the more drip will go. So you don't want necessarily all the drips to go all the way down. So you'll notice I've put very little pressure on these two, because I didn't necessarily want it to go all the way. And I'm just going to kind of work that in. Okay. Trying to decide if I want any more of that. Let's have a look at that. A little bit of this bleach sand color. I just kind of look for where that color is. Pull that out of there. Now, in certain areas like this, you may need to go back in and like make it where it's not so gloppy. You just kind of have to use your judgment on that to see what it kind of needs. I'm going to go into this darker pink. Do a little bit with that. And we'll kind of go in and tidy up our flowers a little bit. want to make sure you're varying, like they're not all starting at the same plane. So like some of them are a little higher than others. Just allow your eye to keep moving and not be drawn to a pattern. Let's see. Before I tidy things up, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more of this dark green here and there. Which just adds a little bit more depth to that. Let's look at this. So I like there not to be a harsh line. So what we're gonna do is take our brush and just make some little like petally guys up here towards the sky. And they aren't the same height. They're not the same size. I'm just gonna turn my brush around so that it doesn't, I'm not forcing it to leave a specific line. I'll go into a different pink and add a couple that way. And you could switch to different brushes. Like you could use a small flat for this, a smaller round for this. Just maybe what I did when I painted it. So I painted this at the art festival thing. When you start painting and you're not sure what you're painting, you're just painting, you see what happens. I'm putting a little bit of this cream up here too. And then you can also paint some of these little small things throughout. So like, let's say you want to paint a little bit in some of these green areas. You can also do that. It'll kind of help break things up and create a little bit more movement. And this one might have been nice if you had underpainted with a color and then you could have saw, you know, little peeps of that. You know how much I like that. Okay. And I'm going to go through and add to my tulips. Color. A lot of this is just about layering, because you'll notice, like if everything has the drops straight through, it's a little hard to read, but if you go back and kind of reaffirm where some of these were, it kind of helps bring it all together. I just kind of keep it in that almost like a cup shape so that they continue to read tulipy and not like necessarily like a rose or anything like that. I'm gonna go in with a smaller brush. Kind of tie up that white. Should be drying up. It can go back on top. And then some little white details. If you pull too much of a color, just wipe it out. Keep going. Sometimes just patch things up because you'll over cover or do something. It doesn't quite read right. I also add a little bit of like white in some of this green area if you want. Just like these are kind of far off blossoms. They were really little. Again, I'm trying to vary the height just a hair so that they don't all end in the same place. Just keeps it more interesting. You could do a little bit of green up there so that it kind of seems like the an extension of the field. Just gonna keep playing with that. Let's see. And then this is one of those you gotta kind of look away from it because it all starts to blur and it's hard to differentiate. I want to look back at it. So I'm gonna step away. I think it needs more pink within the green spaces at the bottom. So that's what I'll do. Touching different shades of pink. This makes the field seem fuller. It doesn't have as much green space and has a lot more flowers. And if you add a darker pink, more like this pink was within there, then you may have a lot more difference, which may be helpful at the moment because I feel like mine doesn't have enough variance. And I kind of want to go softer and paler, so not all my pinky colors together. Work some of these pinks on the side. I'm not trying to make flowers down here or anything, but I do want it to have different tones in that. And then I'll add some of the sea glass. I'm gonna break that up. Maybe a little bit of the green, just so that it kind of reads as a continuation. It's like a soft continuation. I'll do the bottom part in a minute too. I think that's all I'm gonna do. I don't want a whole vast difference. I may get a little bit of yellow and mix a little yellow with that green and kind of have a little bit brighter green mixed within this, which will help balance, I think, all these soft colors. Painting on a big one. See how it's just kind of continuation. I have a couple spots I missed though. And then down here you have the drippage that's happening. You do not want to flip this until it is dry-ish. because you'll end up going drip to the other way, which could be kind of weird. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because I have it here and I'm showing you, but just gonna work that in. Let me go get a little bit of yellow. And mix a little bit of this bright yellow with some green. So it's going to be this kind of super bright green, and I'm just going to do a little bit of that in there as kind of another element to that. And you can kind of continue with some of that color on the edges if you want. It's just nice to vary things up. Okay, that's good. Now I may go in with a little bit thicker white to create some very distinct highlights, but I don't know that I'm gonna. I kind of like how soft it is and how the varying drips go. Yeah, I think I like it. All right, hopefully that class was helpful. I will be filming our next Lush Club class. If you're in Lush Club and watching this, I'll be filming that maybe this afternoon. And we will get this posted for y'all. Thank you so much.